I'm the type of person who, rather than play a whole host of video games only for a short amount of time, only to then move on to the next one, I'm someone who likes to play a handful of video games for an extended period of time. I find it more enjoyable to properly sit down and learn and experience a game, one where I could truly appreciate and enjoy the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to make it. To see the creativity and the intricacies the developers took with their hard earned money and manpower to create. And one of those games that I am regrettably pissed at myself for not playing years ago was Project Zomboid. Project Zomboid is such an amazing gem to me. The layers and intricacies that this game has is it's amazing. I am a huge sucker for zombie games and survival games, and frankly, it's a sin that I didn't play this game much earlier. However, I think I know partially why I didn't get into Zomboid years ago, and only until recently, and that's because on the surface the game doesn't look appealing to me. See, I'm a retard who likes guns and shooting those guns. I like the first person shooters and I like violence. And if that violence isn't some really nasty and awesome shit in first person form, I'm probably not going to be too keen on playing it. And when I first saw the game on the store page, I saw that it was a top down third person game where you had to juggle menus and tabs. That shit looked more like a stupid Dota game or League of Legends or some RPG top down shit that I felt wasn't really going to be for me. On top of that, when I first got a hold of the game, I felt like I really wouldn't like the game due to its pacing. However, I realized that after a few attempts and tries that I simply was looking at the game improperly. I wasn't treating the game with the mentality and respect that you have to have when you play a game like this. And that would be a very slow patience. This is a game that tries to be realistic. Very realistic, in fact. This is not a game where you can fight back against a near impossible force because you're the hero. Oh, no. You see, you're a nobody who's witnessing the end of civilization by an extremely horrific event known as the Nox infection, a disease that infected an overwhelming majority of people and has turned them into zombies that will stop at absolutely nothing to rip you apart. Limb from limb, organ from organ, sinew from sinew, and morsel of flesh by morsel of flesh. You are immune to the airborne strain, but not to the blood and saliva vectors that the disease will transfer to you. And you must do whatever you can to survive as long as possible, but no matter what, these are the end times. There was no hope of survival, and this is how you died. And that's the point of the game. No matter what you do, you're gonna die. Whether it be from a zombie or otherwise, you're gonna die. And just like how you will own nothing and be happy, that's okay. Because the human spirit is great at being a stubborn son of a bitch. And no matter how stacked the odds are against us, we will always fight to prove it wrong and live to see another day. Whether it be a video game or real life. So, in this video, I want to help maybe try to make you understand the basics of Zomboid and how to play it. If you were like me and you were just looking at the game like an autist trying to get it, I want to help try to fix that because I feel many players have been put off by this amazing fucking game by doing that. Seeing and trying to comprehend the game in some way that you really shouldn't be looking at it. You know, you try it once and then you're like, oh, this shit's gay. I don't want to play this. This is my forte. This isn't my taste. And then you put it down and you call it a bad game. But that is such a far fucking cry from the case. I think this game is fucking awesome. Top 10 material of all time. And that's fucking saying something. So, how do you play Project Zomboid? Well, that's what I'm going to be trying to show you. So, if you are new to Zomboid, or you haven't heard of it, or you tried it once and you hated it, you may give it a try and see it in a light that it was properly meant to be shown and appreciated over how great of a game this is. I also want you to note that I am not going to be explaining everything about this game, just the stuff that I feel will help you get the basics down better than the tutorial could ever do, and that you could truly see if Zomboid is a game for you. I also want to note that this game isn't finished. Updates do happen very regularly, and the information in this guide may become outdated down the line, or you'll have to tweak it to the current era or update of the game. I want you to keep that in mind, please. For starters, I don't want to explain the pop-up menu right off the bat because while I feel this does help you understand how the game works, I feel that this only helps you after you've learned the basics. So before we even get into that menu, I want to explain how your character will function because I feel you not being able to understand the way your character is meant to be played and moved around and used will put off more players, even more than the learning curves or all the traits and jobs and all the dumb shit you can do or take, or even just dying repeatedly to zombies because you don't understand how your character is meant to be played and how you're supposed to play the game. Now, you control your character's movement with WASD, W-A-S-D, just like almost every other fucking video game you've ever played. This lets you walk around in the world. Now, to control your character's direction, you either need to hold down the left control key or your right mouse button. This will let your character aim in whatever direction that you drag your mouse to. Not only will this allow your character to face a specific direction, but this is how combat works. More about that later in this guide. Now, in order to run, you need to use the left shift key while moving, and this will allow you to run in the direction that you're walking and facing. And if you need to even go faster, you can hold down left alt and you'll go out into this full retard rush into that direction you're facing. Now, after you tire yourself out or you stop slamming your fat ass into a wall or a counter, I recommend that we go up to a container and we check it out so you can understand how the drop-down menus work. In Project Zomboid, you have two primary drop-down menus. The first is the menu of your character and anything they may be holding or wearing, like a bag or a backpack. This includes everything your character has equipped. Anything that they're wearing, anything in their active inventory, or generally just stuff that they're carrying on their personage. The other menu is what is either in a nearby container or in the environment or on the floor. When near multiple containers, or if you have multiple bags on your person, you can click on the icon that you wish to view in order to grab or put items from one inventory to another. Now, in order to place items, you need to take items from one container to move them from your personage to said container. You either need to right-click on that item and then place it into the desired container, or you can just drag and drop the items into the other menu. This is really good if you need to grab a bunch of things or you're just transferring them to a desired place you want them to be in. This also applies to the floor as well. You can just drop shit onto the floor if you want. Fuck it. After getting familiar with the inventory management system, you should take a look at the left side of your screen. This is the interface you'll be using when playing the game. This will allow you to inspect, interact, and work within the game's world and the things you may find in it. On top of that, some of the things will be for your character in their inventory, so it's very wise to learn these. The first two icons on the top left of the inventory are what your character has equipped. The primary one is what your character will be using in their right hand, whatever this may be, a weapon, a bag, a tool, or anything that your character needs for a certain task or objective to be completed. The second, smaller circle is what will be in your character's left hand. Also keep note that certain things like two-handed weapons will need to be equipped in both hands, otherwise they won't be used as efficiently as they would when properly equipped. The box icon is your inventory. If you accidentally click away your drop-down menus, clicking on this will restore them so you can use your inventory once again. The heart icon will bring up your character's health. This will show how healthy you are or aren't at that moment. If and when you take damage and you sustain injuries, you'll be able to treat the wounds if you can. We'll go into these types of injuries down the line, or just first aid in general. We're still at the very basics and how you're going to function and work in this world. For now, just know that when your character has 0 health, they'll fucking die. Shocker. Whenever you take damage, the heart icon will shake. The faster you're losing health, the more violent the shaking will be. Below the height icon is the hammer and the carpenter square. This is the crafting tab. This will allow you to craft and create a whole host of things that you may want to create when you actually start learning how the game works. Going under each tab is the general category of items you can create. For example, cooking will allow you to create dishes and meals for your characters to eat if you have the proper ingredients and knowledge. Carpentry will allow you to create things made out of wood, and survival will let you create many things used when, you're out in the wilderness or you need something outdoors like a campfire kit. The drawer icon will allow you to do various things to furniture and placeable objects within the world. By clicking on the drawer, 4 extra options will pop up. The first option will allow you to pick up various objects in the world if you have the proper skills and weight allowance. Things like couches, radios, refrigerators, and more. Keep in mind, this isn't small stuff like water bottles or weapons. This is stuff that actually is placed in the environment. Furniture and tables and shit. The place option will allow you to place things from your inventory onto the world. Don't forget that you can use the R key to rotate the object to be flush within a wall or an angle that you do or don't want it to be. Rotate will let you rotate an object, but with your mouse instead of the R key, and disassemble will allow you to disassemble objects in the world for raw materials and XP. Keep in mind that the higher your skill is pertaining to what you're dismantling, the more likely you are to get the usable components, and don't forget you're going to need certain tools and requirements in order to dismantle certain things. The magnifying glass will allow you to enter search mode. By enabling search mode, you will start to forage in your surroundings. This will allow you to pick up items you otherwise wouldn't have been able to take notice of. Now, depending on your environment, the possible items you can find will vary. However, this will be covered more extensively when I talk about the foraging skill later. Now, aside from foraging, you can also use the search icon to see what time of day or night it is, and what type of environment you're roughly in. And number 9 is the map. As you explore and progress throughout the game, you can see this to where you've been, and it will allow you to mark and edit the map provided that you have a pen or pencil on your person. Now, on the bottom of your screen, you should see 3 boxes. These are the hotkeys that your character has access to. So instead of fiddling around with your inventory all the time, you can have quick access to certain things. The first box is your back. This will allow you to place certain tools or melee weapons that only can go on your back, like a crowbar or a lead pipe. The second and third boxes are where you can put things on your belt. Stuff like tools, certain electronic devices, and smaller melee weapons. Firearms, however, will not be able to be equipped on your belt. In order to hotkey handguns, you're going to have to start wearing a holster. These will be found throughout the world and you'll eventually come across them. Rifles and shotguns, however, will be equipable on your back and can be done so at any time, as long as you have a fucking rifle or a shotgun. Now, after that you've gotten familiar with the first 2 sets of icons, you've probably noticed that there are some icons popping up on the top right of your screen. These icons are called moodles. Moodles are modifiers that is happening to your character at that particular moment. Since this is a survival game, you will have to pay attention to these moodles and what they are doing and meaning for your character. Now, there are obvious ones like hunger and thirst, of course. This signals that your character is starting to get hungry or thirsty and they should probably eat and drink stuff. Unless you want to fucking die of dehydration in the zombie apocalypse. That's fucking embarrassing. However, there are many more moodles that you should be wary of. Bleeding is a moodle where your character has at least one open wound and they're bleeding from it. The darker the moodle is, the more severe and more wounds you have. You should probably bandage those wounds. Tied with your health, the pain and injury moodles will often show up. The injury moodle will appear and increase in severity depending on how low your health is, and the pain moodle shows how much pain your character is in, most likely from how many or how severe the injuries you have are. Boredom is when your character is bored from inactivity and doing mundane things or doing stuff indoors for too long and you're starting to crack up by get cabin fever. The more severe your boredom is, the faster your unhappiness moodle will appear. Now, the more severe your unhappiness is, the slower your actions will be, whether this is transferring items from inventories, building something, interacting with containers, etc. The heavy load moodle indicates that you're carrying too much gear on the items of your person at that particular moment, and this will start to lead to negative consequences. The more encumbered you are, the worse you'll be off. The hyperthermia moodle indicates how hot your character is getting. This is done by doing exhausting activities such as fighting zombies, running, wearing warm clothing in the summer, and more. The worse your hyperthermia work got back. The worse your hyperthermia is, the worse your character will perform, similar to hypothermia. This moodle will show how cold your character is getting, often during the cold months of the year. As you get colder, the worse the effects will be. Tied with the weather, the wet moodle will show how wet your character and your character's clothing are. The more wet you are, the more likely you are to catch a cold. Now, catching a cold is another moodle that you're going to have to look out for. This is when your character has the flu and is sick from it. The worse off your sickness is, the weaker your character is, so it's generally a good idea to not get sick. However, sickness is another moodle. Not like the cold moodle. This moodle is one of the icon of a green character with their tongue hanging out. This is often when you're around a bunch of rotting corpses and your character is getting quite nauseous being around those corpses. Either that or you may have sadly gotten infected with the zombie infection. And possibly tied with the zombie infection is the stress moodle. This is often going to pop up when you're infected with the zombie infection or you have certain traits that are causing your character to stress out. Another moodle tied to the stress moodle is the panic moodle. Panic is when your character is panicking. No shit. This is often the case when you're around zombies. The more zombies, the bigger your panic. And the more you're panicking, the less likely you are able to hit your shots, your vision will narrow, and you can see less in the direction you're facing, and you're generally dealing less damage with your melee weapons. Panic people cannot sleep, and the stress may wake you up from a nightmare, and this can be a bitch to deal with, especially if you have the tired moodle. Now, the tired moodle is when your character has gone without sleeping for extended periods. Depending on how tired you are, you're going to be dealing less damage with melee weapons, and the slower you'll be able to regenerate your endurance. Now, endurance is when your character is increasingly winded from doing physically taxing things like fighting zombies, doing strenuous labor, carrying an ass ton of things for an extended period of time, etc. The more exerted you are, the less damage you'll be able to deal to zombies, and the slower you will move. Not only this, but the faster you will tire and you're going to need sleep. If not properly managed, the death spiral will be, well, the death of you, where you will die from exhaustion and you'll be too slow, and the zombies will catch up and rip you apart. Wind chill is a moodle where the wind is fucking blowing on your character and you feel much colder than how you actually are, kinda like humans in real life. A fun little piece of trivia is that we are the only animals who quote-unquote feel wind chill. That's a neat little fact for you to go home about. Now, this mood will often pop up in the fall and winter when blizzards and nastier weather conditions are more prone to happen. And the drunk moodle is whenever your character has consumed alcohol. The more they consume, the more shit-faced they're gonna be. The boozing and cruising lifestyle is finally legal because there are no more laws, so feel free to pour up and drink on me. And to top off the other moodles, the dead and zombie moodle is whenever your character fucking dies. If they just died, the dead moodle will appear. But if your character got infected, they will rise after death and become another victim of the Knox County infection. Another thing to note is that moodles will often have positive or negatives to your character stats, like carry weight capability, strength, damage being dealt, and more. I won't give the numbers because I want the new players who are listening to this experience this firsthand and then help with the immersion that the game wants to achieve. Now that we have learned the basics of how to function within the game, at least with an in-game controllable character, and the effects that that character may experience, I want to discuss the very next fundamental part of Zomboid, and that is character creation. Now, character creation is very important because with the right jobs and traits, you can radically change how your character will play in the game. This can lead to certain play styles or abilities that you can't be learned or used or picked up anywhere. Or this could just be simple bonuses towards certain skills that you like to use, making them much easier to level up for you. As you learn from your deaths and grow as a player, over time you will start to develop certain play styles and ways that you just like to play the game. You'll appreciate certain mechanics in the game over others, and you'll probably wish and want to tailor your character to certain play styles better. And here I'm gonna help you understand how these work. Now, this is the menu that you'll see every time you join a new server, you create a solo game for yourself, or you die in a pre-made world already. This is how you will create and tweak your upcoming character's life, and this will be a major factor in determining how easy or hard it will be for you to survive, based on, well, how you like to play. We will start with the occupations and how the point system works. Now, no matter what you pick in Zomboid, you either have to break even or you have to have an excess of positive points, no matter what. You'll not be able to start a game without breaking even with the negative points or traits or occupations that you decide to take. This will help to challenge and keep the player not only engaged, but to emphasize that you're not a superhero. You're just a regular person with the flaws and good and bad that we each individually have. Now is also probably a good time to preface what the skills are in Zomboid, because skills are extremely important and are tied with the occupations and traits that you're gonna take. The various skills in Zomboid are what will help you survive based on how you want to play. These skills are important as well because the higher the skill is, the more you can do in that specific category. This usually means that you'll have a greater pool of things that you can craft or do in that field, you're more efficient with the using of materials, and it'll allow you to just generally be a better survivor. In the game, you'll be able to see your skill tree by clicking on the heart icon and going to the Skills tab. Here we can see a whole host of skills and the progress of leveling each of those skills up. All skills have a max level of 10 and are divided into 6 categories: passive, agility, combat, crafting, firearms, and survivalist. The passive skill only has 2 skills, fitness and strength. Fitness is how fit your character is and how much endurance they have. This means how much more longer your character can stay in a fight, can run, or do physically taxing things before becoming exerted. Strength is how much your character can carry before starting to deal with encumbrance problems, and how much harder you're going to hit zombies with melee weapons. The agility tree is your ability to move and maneuver within Knox County. Sprinting is how fast your character will actually haul ass, light-footed is how quiet your character will move in general, nimble is how fast your character will move when you're in combat stance, and sneaking is how efficient you will be whenever you decide to sneak instead of walking, running, or engaging in combat. To sneak, you need to press the C key, and this will let you crouch. Crouching helps you sneak by zombies, and if you walk against a fence or another object, your character will conceal themselves better to avoid being seen. Now, the combat skill set is how efficient you are with weapons in that skill set. For the most part, these stats are the same for all weapons on how the skills will affect your use with them. As you gain more skill with weapons in that category, you'll be able to deal more damage, you have a higher crit rate with that weapon, and you have a greater chance you'll be able to shove a zombie off if you miss an attack wrongly. Also keep in mind that this shove will only apply to zombies that are facing you, not in the back. And there's also an extra caveat that you should add with the combat skills, and that is the short blade category. Short blade has an additional factor that will increase the chance of you being able to instantly kill a zombie by fucking stabbing it in its jaw and scrambling its brains by killing it. Also keep in mind that not all weapons are equal. Some weapon skills obviously deal more damage than others, but this is often evened out by how hard it is to scavenge the weapons in the game, or how rare they are. There's also one more skill in the combat tree, and that is maintenance. Maintenance is how likely or not the condition of the weapon will go down per swing and attack. The higher the weapon skill, the less likely your weapons are to wear down. The maintenance skill is invaluable for specific weapon types where they break down often or they're just rare to begin with. Like the spear category will often break only after a few uses, or the long blade category where long bladed weapons are the rarest in the game. And if you decide to use them, you want to keep them in usable condition for the longest time possible. Also, a final thing to note about the maintenance category is that the skill does not apply to firearms, only melee weapons. The next category of skills is crafting. This skill set is generally tied with how efficient and well you will be when doing certain things related to that skill, and this will allow you to craft more things pertaining to the skill. Carpentry is simple enough. This will allow you to be more efficient at disassembling wooden pieces of furniture, building walls and structures more cleanly and efficiently, and allow you to build more things from scratch with wood and nails. It's carpentry. Cooking allows you to cook and create dishes from ingredients that you may find in the world. Cooking is great because properly cooked meals not only fill you up more, but they also provide ways to get rid of built-up boredom and sadness. And not only that, but you can use ingredients more efficiently and food will go further when used in recipes. You can also detect poison in case someone has cooked you something and they used bleach or poisonous plants in it. You never know what you're truly eating, especially in multiplayer. Farming allows you to be a better farmer. The higher your farming skill is, the more information you have on crops that you've planted and are growing. And not only that, but the crops you do plant will have more starting health and will be less prone to getting diseases, thus allowing you to be well fed long after the stores and homes lose food that you can loot and eat. First aid allows you to more efficiently heal yourself and others when applying first aid. This applies to the quote-unquote health of bandages and other medical procedures done to yourself. Wounds and injuries will not only heal faster, but they'll be more efficient and less prone to getting infected. The electrical skill allows you to operate certain electronics like generators and allow you to craft and create various doohickeys and trinkets that can be useful when you're dealing with zombies. Electrical is also needed when trying to learn how to hotwire vehicles. Metalworking allows you to build various pieces of structures with metal, making them more durable and stronger than wooden structures. And not only this, but you're more likely to harvest usable components from dismantled metallic objects. This also ties into the mechanics skill where you can repair certain parts of vehicles more efficiently, allowing you to keep a machine running much longer. Mechanics is a skill that allows you to strip, fix, replace, and repair vehicles. Vehicles, they're a pretty freaking nice thing to have in Zomboid. It allows you to travel vast distances safely and quickly. It also provides us portable storage and is another barrier between you and zombies. This will allow you to repair and maintain your vehicles that you find in the world, giving them more life. Mechanics are also tied with being able to hotwire vehicles. Hotwiring vehicles requires level 2 mechanics and level 1 electrical. Once you have those, you can hotwire any vehicle in the game and drive it. The final crafting skill is tailoring. Tailoring allows you to patch up damaged pieces of clothing and allow you to reinforce your clothing with patches, thus making you less likely to get bit or scratched when dealing with zombie attacks. A great skill to learn when all it takes for your character to die is one bite or one scratch. Now the next tree of skills is the firearm skills. There are only 2 skills in this category, aiming and reloading. Aiming is how likely you are to hit your shot. Keep in mind that this skill applies to all firearms. Shotguns, handguns, and rifles are all equally used under the aiming skill. And reloading is how efficient you are to fill magazines, load bullets into firearms, and swap those magazines from said firearms. The final skill is the survivalist skill. This is how well you can survive off the land by acquiring food and other resources from Mother Nature. The first is fishing. Fishing allows you to have better odds when trying to catch fish, and you have a greater chance of catching a bigger fish, thus providing you with a bigger meal. Trapping gives you a better chance of catching game when you're setting up a trap. From rabbits, rats, birds, squirrels, and more. This will allow you to gather protein once you've eaten the rest of your canned supplies. And the final skill in the survivalist tab is foraging. Foraging will allow you to have better odds of finding various things you can use in your aid for survival. From medicinal plants to edible food to junk far away from home. The higher your foraging skill is, the better off you'll be at whatever you need to turn to Mother Nature to provide. Now that we have explained what each skill is and a general gist of how it works in-game, why does this matter when creating characters with jobs and traits? Well, the answer is simple. It's much easier to level up the skills when you pick jobs and traits with XP multipliers in them. Whenever you're looking at a skill, you can see how much XP you will need in that skill in order to get it to the next level. For example, getting to level 1 on any skill will require you to get to level 75. Once you get to level 1, you'll have to get that to level 2, and so on and so forth. The higher the level, the more XP you're going to need to get to that level. And in Zomboid, some skills can be really shitty to grind. Metalworking, mechanics, and tailoring can be quite the bitch when you're trying to level it. And if you like using those skills, it can be infuriating and boring just to try to grind these skills. This is where occupations and traits come to help us greatly. Now, if you were to pick certain traits or jobs, you'll see at the bottom right of the screen when you're creating your character that it will have green bars and a plus sign pertaining to that skill. The plus skill will be a flat bonus percentage to any XP that you gain in that skill. And not only that, but how many traits or specific jobs will make that skill have a much larger flat bonus to that skill. For example, if we take a look at the construction worker occupation, your character will have a starting level of +3 short blunt skill right off the bat as soon as you spawn in, and a +1 to the carpentry skill. This equates to a 125% XP gain for all XP you get in the short blunt weapon category, and a +75% XP gain for carpentry. You see where this is going? Now, based on your starting level, this will determine how much of an XP multiplier you will have pertaining to that skill. If you start the game with 1 in that skill, you'll have a 75% XP boost gain in that skill. If you start off with 2, you'll gain 100% XP, and level 3 will give you a 125% XP boost. And also keep in mind that if you start the game with a character with 4 or more skills completed in a skill, you'll not be able to increase the flat XP boost past 125%. So you can't have a day 1 level carpentry build with some uber stack build or some shit like that. And this applies to almost all skills in some form or fashion. In fact, the only skills which I don't believe have any XP boost at all, no matter what you can make, is the long blade skill. This is part of the balancing of long blade weapons. Not only do you have to get retarded lucky in finding them, but you cannot gain any XP boost with them. The good news is, though, that they do a fuck ton of damage at least. Also, another thing to note on leveling your skills, with the crafting and survival tabs, you can read books to help you level up your character much easier. Throughout the world, you'll be able to find skill books that will allow you to add an additional multiplier to skills, making them much easier to level up. Keep this in mind that this will stack on top of skills that you already have a flat XP boost with. These books are called whatever the skill may be, followed by the numbers 1 through 5, and each number will give you a multiplier for the next 2 skills. For example, Carpentry Skill Book 1 will give you a multiplier for skills 1 and 2, Carpentry Skill Book 2 will give you a multiplier for skills 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. Also keep note that the weapon skills will not have a readable book to give you any extra multipliers, so keep that in mind when you're creating a character. Another thing to note about our skill magazines. This will allow you to craft or do certain things in the world, such as unlocking extra food recipes, give you the ability to operate generators, and much more. Also keep in mind, some of these things can only be crafted or created with people that have a specific job title or trait. An example of this is the engineer. The engineer can create offensive contraptions such as pipe bombs, fire bombs, and aerosol bombs. You cannot learn these recipes anywhere else. Only people who take the engineer occupation can make them. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, with all of that properly covered, I hope you do have an understanding of how these skills roughly work. It took a lot of time to explain, but it's something that does need to be said and explained because it's such an important thing in the game. It can literally mean the difference between you getting killed or surviving a tough situation with a combination of the wits and gear at your disposal. With this information, you can finally start making educated decisions on how you generally want to play the game with each type of skill, and you can adjust to how you start liking to play Zomboid. So get out there and experiment. Be the change in the meta that you want others to have. And sure, while it's nice to have the most well-stacked character possible for yourself, that don't mean shit if you can't survive in the zombie world. And if you cannot even deal with the zombies, then the most overpowered and most well-built meta character isn't gonna mean shit for you. Luckily for you, I'm gonna help you learn the Baldi's... Fuck. The... Shit. I'm gonna help you learn the Baldi's basics of combat. Fuck. Alright, anyway, now with any war, understanding your enemy and their habits is key to victory, and boy, are zombies predictable as shit. With their default settings on, zombies are relatively slow creatures that will stop at nothing in order to rip you apart. While they lack the basic motor function that they used to have and the smarts, they make up for it with their amazing ass endurance. They never tire, and they're never able to be wounded. They never give up when pursuing a livable person or something that makes noise. And it's not the zombies' combat abilities that are so deadly per se. Their ability is to never tire and restrain, means that while they may be slow, they will forever be marching forward. And many of players, veteran and noob alike, have fallen to them, just due to simple exhaustion. It's like how our ancestors used to do hunting. It didn't matter that the deer and the woolly mammoths were faster than us. We could keep following them at a walking speed until they collapsed from exhaustion. And then we went in for the kill. However, instead of humans being the hunters, the zombies are now the hunters. So while you may be able to get away from them with your incredible speed and smarts, they never stop chasing. Apart from their ability to never tire, zombies also have special mechanics that you need to be aware of. Whenever a group of 3 or more can land an attack on your character at the same time, the zombies will pull you down and rip you to pieces. No exceptions. Even if you have the best armor and the tailored gear on and you're not taking any damage, the zombies will still rip you apart and you will die. So this makes hordes even more dangerous than they obviously already were. Also, zombies do not fight fairly. Not all zombies will react to weird noises, and some will stay silent around corners, closets, or rooms, waiting to scare the shit out of you and land a cheap bite on your ass. Another thing to note is that zombies are more likely to inflict a fatal bite on your character if they attack from behind. So it's incredibly important to never, ever let a zombie get the jump on you. This can not only bite you, but it can stun lock you into a horde that will rip you apart if you're not careful. Now, zombies on their own aren't too big of a threat if you know how to deal with them. In order to attack a zombie, you need to enter the combat stance with either a firearm or a melee weapon equipped. And when a zombie is in range, you can either hit it, shoot it, or shove it to the ground. Now, zombies in a down state from either falling down, getting shoved over, or tripping over a fence will take increased damage, making it a good strategy to abuse the environment when dealing with zombies in the beginning. However, you need to note that if you stand too close and you don't strike, or there are multiple zombies, some of them can leap forward and swipe at you, causing you to possibly trip or stumble, leading you to an opening for zombies to butcher you. Another thing to note is that when a zombie is knocked down, if you stand on a zombie, he will be incapable of getting back up. This also applies if a zombie or a horde of zombies is walking over a downed zombie. This will help space the hordes out, making it easier to attack zombies one by one rather than just being a big ass lump of flesh. A final thing to note is that even if you do not have a melee weapon, you can always curb stomp a zombie. When you are in a combat stance and you press spacebar, you will do what Wings of Redemption does to black people and smash their skulls into concrete. A great thing to do when you have boots on, or you're struggling in the early game, or you just want to save your weapon's durability. And you can knock a zombie down by using the spacebar when entering a combat stance, no matter what weapon you have on or not on at that moment. And I don't think I need to mention this, because you're listening to this, you probably know what a zombie game is, but aim for the fucking head. It's a zombie game. You need to smash their fucking brains into the street in order to kill them. And you know you've killed a zombie when you hear a disgustingly satisfying squish sound. And as this is a zombie game, the main threat of the zombies, aside from their strength and keen attention to noise, is the fact that they will often group up. I mean, sure, a few stragglers here or there, or even a small spread out horde could be dealt with relative ease, but a swarming horde heading your way is nothing to be happy with. This is a dangerous moment and you need to know how to deal with it. For newer players, I recommend an ounce of prevention rather than a pound of cure. Since you're still learning the ropes of the game, you probably don't have the skill or understanding on how to one-man army 100 hordes. So you should try to do your best to avoid combat whenever possible. Since noise and weird movements will draw zombies, you need to do your best to stay quiet, small, and away from zombies. This will help you learn the ropes to play better when you're dealing with one or two of them rather than 80 and then you rage quit when you die in a fucking big ass swarm of them. And I might as well tell you now that sadly, this isn't like most other zombie games where having a firearm is necessarily a good thing to have, since you're going to have to be abusing quite the trigger discipline and not use firearms until you know you're fucking ready with them. Since firearms are fucking loud, and you probably don't have a high enough aiming skill to use them efficiently, you're only just going to be drawing neighborhoods of zombies on yourself. And aside from that, you're not even going to be able to hit an overwhelming majority of your shots, let alone kill shots. And aside from firearms, you need to be wary of things that also draw them, like house alarms. When the window is broken or something enters a building, if there is an alarm, it will blare and it's going to make a fuck ton of noise, leading to half of a citywide dinner bell called to be heard upon, leaving you in a horrific spot. When moving from place to place, always have an escape route in case something terrible goes wrong. Zomboid isn't a fair game, and you could die by shitty timing on your part of RNG of wherever the zombies have spawned throughout the world. Or if there's a really inconvenient house alarm, and that just means the difference between you having a relatively safe night to rest up, or the fucking whole town is going to come down and rip you apart. So you need to be extremely careful when you start your looting sprees and you start dipping your feet into the pools of, well, zombie blood. Now the sad reality is that you're gonna get hurt in Zomboid, and the zombies will be a major factor in this. However, this isn't the only way you can get hurt. I feel like I need to include a more in-depth first aid guide, because I remember my first game where I got scratched in a tree and I couldn't figure out for the life of me how to fucking stop the bleeding. It took a surprising amount of digging at the time to figure out how first aid worked. So I want to help you understand by how first aid works. Now, if and when your character gets an injury, it will show up in your health tab. By clicking on the little heart icon, you'll see the status of your character and what is or isn't the problem at that moment for the sake of your overall general well-being. Depending on the injury, you may require specialized equipment in order to deal with the injury, and this can really be something that helps humble you when you're at a good run with a character who has good health. So always appreciate when your character has good health. You never know when it's going to go away. Now, here's how first aid works in general terms. Whenever you get an injury like a scratch, a laceration, or some other open wound, you're most likely going to need to bandage it. And while there are many types of bandages in the game, I'm only going to tell you how to get the most commonly used bandage, and that is rip sheets. Rip sheets, as the name implies, are sheets of fabric ripped apart and used as bandages for your boo-boos. To get rip sheets, you'll need to rip apart clothing or certain fabric items like sheets to get ripped bandages. Also, keep in mind how clean the clothing is will determine how clean versus dirty sheets you will get. Now, once you have your sheets, right-click on the red text in the health menu, and you will have a menu pop down, telling you what you can or can't do. You'll probably wish to bandage your wound so you can start to heal and stop the bleeding. Keep the wound clean, change the bandage when it gets dirty, and you'll eventually be good in no time. And also just keep in mind that even if you're desperate enough, you can rip apart clothing off of zombies. Yeah, it's the apocalypse. Not everything's gonna be nice and clean and orderly. You're gonna have to get down and dirty, sometimes literally. I want to add a caveat to first aid. If you get your injuries from a zombie, you need to be mentally prepared for this information. In Project Zomboid, bites are not the only ways of getting infected with the Knox County infection. Bites will have a 100% infection rate no matter what. No matter what you do, or how you clean, or how you apply first aid onto these wounds, you are going to die. There is nothing you could do to prevent it. How you will spend the last few hours or days with your character is up to you. Zombies that lacerate you and cause a laceration have a 25% chance of infecting you. Much better odds than a bite, but you should still be very careful about this. Always keep in the back of the mind that you may need to Amanda Todd yourself to speed up death if you start showing infection signs and you don't want to die a slow death and you just want to get it over with. And finally, scratches will have a 7% chance of infecting you with the zombie infection. Even greater odds of survival, but the point is you need to avoid these injuries whenever possible. An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, because there is no cure. And with all of that information, I think the meat and potatoes of Zomboid has been explained. Hopefully, well. Keep in mind, I intentionally tried to keep the info just to the very rudimental layers of the game because the true fun and enjoyment of a new player getting into Zomboid is getting out there and learning how this massive game plays, and you'll eventually carve your own niche and playstyle in it. I, however, want to give you a few extra tips and addendums that I feel is good to know, and it won't be forcing or telling you how to play the game in a specific way, almost like any other fucking tutorial that any asshole makes on this fucking game. Cars are technically not required, but are fucking awesome to have. As explained earlier, if you can find a working vehicle, it would be within your best interest to take care of that the best you can. Zombies deal a fuck ton of damage to vehicles. You ever hit a 100 to 400 pound angry piece of flesh with a vehicle? Imagine doing that 20 to 50 times. The fucking car will die in front of you. Don't get bit. Shocking no shit moment, I know, but that is a definite game over. You should occasionally remind yourself to not get bit, and this will in turn help you play better because you're mentally telling yourself to stay alert and to be a better player. Zombies can sometimes have useful gear on them, and as the apocalypse worsens, more interesting things will be available to the player if you can find it on them. You never know. Almost everything in the game has a use. You'd be surprised at what some things can be used for. Just keep that in mind. Every time you leave a place of safety, you're gambling your life. Make sure you know that and plan accordingly. I and many others have died to something stupid or minute, and that was only really because we went out when we didn't have to, or we underestimated certain situations. There are other ways aside from doing tasks related to a skill that can get you XP. Make a mental note of this. You never know. If you're playing a single player game, you can fast forward time twice or 3 times as fast as normal speed. This is good as some tasks will have your character sit in place doing something for many real life minutes. You can use noise to your advantage. Pressing Q will make your character tard screech and flush out zombies. And of course, there are also more ingenious ways of using sound to distract or move zombies. Don't get too attached when your character dies. It's easy for me to say this, but the point of Zomboid is to die. It's just that every time you play it again, you're trying to prove it wrong by living longer and better. Utilize modern luxuries while you can. The things we take for granted will go away, so enjoy them while you can. I would stick with one weapon type per character when possible. You will deal more damage with it and be more efficient with it. A high skill in weapons is extremely important and will mean the difference between killing a zombie when your back's against the wall and dying. And with that, you are properly kitted out with the basics of Project Zomboid. I'm telling you, this is an absolutely amazing game, and I do hope you give it a chance, or if you have already, you give it another chance if you didn't like it. It's a game with a huge learning curve, but once you accept it and you start plinking and playing away at it, oh man, the game is so rewarding and fun. I can't recommend the game enough. I hope to see you in Knox County one day. Maybe we could link up or swap gunfire. Either way, I hope to see you playing one day.